So you've probably heard the name, the Blue Whale Challenge. It's been all over the news. But behind all those alarming headlines, there's a really complex and frankly dangerous story. Today, we're going to cut through all that noise. Using actual academic research, we're going to break down what this thing truly is and why getting it right is literally a matter of life and death. So here's what we're going to cover. First up, what is this challenge really? Then we'll look at a real-world case to see how it sucks people in. We'll track where it came from, and this is super important, we're going to bust a really dangerous myth about how it works. And finally, we'll get into why experts are saying we are not paying nearly enough attention to this. All right, let's just dive right in. We need to be crystal clear about what we're talking about here, because calling this a game, that's the first and maybe the most dangerous mistake anyone can make. Yeah, see, researchers don't call it a game at all. They use a very specific term, a dangerous gamification activity. Just let that sink in. It takes all the things we know from games, daily tasks, leveling up, a final goal, but it twists them into this horrifying 50-day series of escalating self-harm. And the final task is to commit suicide. This isn't fun, it's a calculated psychological trap, and that's exactly why it's treated as such a major public health emergency. Okay, to really get a handle on this and see how it works in the real world, let's look at a case study from the medical literature. This shows us, step by step, just how a young person can get pulled into this whole mess. The whole thing always starts small, almost silly. You get a link, you install something that looks like an app, and the first task is something totally harmless, like clapping your hands twice. And that's the whole point, right? It's designed to build trust and get your guard down. But then, the requests start to escalate, fast. They turn into acts of self-harm, like carving into your own skin. It's a textbook grooming technique. In this specific case, a parent found out and stepped in, which was absolutely life-saving. But it just goes to show you the terrifyingly manipulative process that's at work here. And this whole progression, it's not random. It's designed to play out over 50 days. 50. That's almost 2 months of sustained psychological manipulation, all designed to just grind down a person's resistance and make self-destructive behavior seem normal over time. So, a question you have to ask is, where did something this twisted even come from? And how on earth does it keep spreading? Well, the story starts in one specific place, but it goes global real quick. So it all kicked off on a Russian social network back in 2016. Now, the creator, he was arrested that same year. But here's the thing, it was already too late. The timeline shows you the most critical point. Arresting the guy who started it didn't stop it. The idea itself went viral. It just jumped to every major platform, Twitter, Instagram, you name it, and became this international threat that a single arrest couldn't possibly contain. To really understand what was driving this, you have to hear it from the creator himself. When he was interviewed, this is what Philippe Boudaikin said. He actually believed he was cleansing society of what he called biodegradable waste. This quote is, well, it's horrifying, but it's so important. It confirms this was never, ever a game. It's a predatory ideology, plain and simple, designed from the ground up to target and eliminate vulnerable people. Okay, now we're getting to what might be the most critical part of this whole explainer. A really common and really dangerous misconception. The reality is not about a piece of software. It's about people. And understanding this difference is the absolute key to preventing it. This right here is the critical distinction. The myth, what most people think, is that there's a Blue Whale app you can just find and delete. But the reality is so much more sinister. There is no single app to delete. Instead, you have real people, they call themselves curators, actively hunting for vulnerable teens on social media. They use certain hashtags to find them, and then they start a direct one-on-one manipulation, feeding them these tasks personally. In fact, it's not just a two-person thing. When you analyze the social media data, you see this whole ecosystem that pops up. Of course, you have the potential victims, but then you have the propagators and curators. Those are the people actively pushing the challenge. And then there's this really interesting third group, hashtag hijackers. These are people who use the same hashtags to post positive messages or warnings, trying to intervene and break the cycle. So this whole complex social ecosystem, with predators, victims, and even some digital rescuers, it really shines a light on a huge problem. And that brings us to the core argument of the research we've been looking at today. Why is something so dangerous being basically ignored by so many experts? And the researchers who wrote this paper, They do not mince words. They say that despite all the media hype, there is a shocking lack of serious academic study on this. The very scholars who are supposed to be analyzing our digital world have pretty much overlooked this whole phenomenon. And that leaves a massive, dangerous gap in our understanding of how to fight it. And why does that matter so much? Well, because dedicated research is how we get actual solutions. It would help us figure out exactly how this thing spreads. It would give parents and schools real tools for prevention. It would help lawmakers stop it from spreading further. And ultimately, as the research makes very clear, it would save future lives. And so we're left with this massive question, aren't we? The Blue Whale Challenge, it isn't just some weird one-off thing. It's a symptom of a much bigger problem. It proves that these predatory ideologies can now spread through social networks, using the language of games to do horrific things. So the real challenge for us isn't just about stopping one game. It's about figuring out how we can actually protect the most vulnerable people in a digital world where the next threat is always just one hashtag away. That's something we all really need to think about. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.